everyone, and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Alexia, and I am a project and event manager at the Microsoft Reactor. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly review two items with you, our code of conduct and event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. I will be sharing the link to our channel in the chat. And if you've not been on the live stream through YouTube before, please note that you must create an account on YouTube in order to access and interact in the chat. You can set that up now, and if you're unable to use the chat but have questions, feel free to reach out to us through social media or on Meetup. Which brings us to today's session. I'm going to bring in our speakers here with us. Hi, everyone. Hi, Christine. Hi, Jaflet. How is everybody doing today?
Hi, Alexia. I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing? You okay?
Fantastic. Jaflet, how's it going?
Hello, everyone. Hi. How's it going?
Thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Amazing pleasure.
We're very excited for today's session. Building accessible application on Microsoft Power Platform. Super exciting. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks, Alexia.
Great. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here with you all. I'm Jaflet Swamu. I am a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this session. So I can remember days back when we decided to work on this session. We're asked who to bring in to talk about accessible applications, and Christine was recommended for this session. Lots of feedback on how some of the sessions she has had in the past, some of the projects she has built that have talked to me about accessibility. She's passionate about accessibility, and I'm glad to be in this session with her. Christine, over to you now. Could you please do a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Jaflet. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Christine Kolodjewski, like you said. I am based in London in the UK, and I work as a principal technical consultant for a large Microsoft Gold partner called Computer Center. Now, I am a very kind of avid UX UA obsessed person. What comes with that is obviously accessibility. To me, that's a huge part of UX and UI. If your application isn't accessible, naturally, it's not going to provide the best user experience. I'm a 13 times Microsoft certified technical professional. I'm a huge geek. I love contributing to the community, so speaking at events, contributing in the forums. I'm also a blogger as well, and I've done quite a few collaborations. And yes, I am beyond excited to be here today.
Great. I'm excited to be in this session with you too. So just before you dive in, I'm still learning about accessibility, but I know you know a lot about accessibility. And one key question I've been really wanting to ask is, why accessibility? Why are you passionate about accessibility? Why do you think accessibility is something we all should pay attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect question. So accessibility by kind of dictionary is allowing your users to be able to use an application that you have built, a website that you may have built, any kind of solution, regardless of their personal characteristics. So whether that is a permanent disability, a temporary impairment, or a situational disability, it's empowering every user and including them in your application. And I think it's extremely important to make applications accessible because we can all be affected by a disability at one point in our life, which I will actually show in a slide deck shortly.
Great. That reminds me, I was supposed to do a proper introduction to make this session more accessible. So I'm Jaflet Wamu, and I am light-skinned in complexion with short hair, black. I am currently wearing a hash color hoodie and a white shirt. So that's about me. I'm from Nigeria. I'm based currently in Abuja. Yeah, I guess that made me a little bit accessible to people.
Perfect. Perfect. And
Great.
I am a 27-year-old white female with blonde hair, long hair, black jumper on, and having the biggest smile on my face because I'm so excited to be here.
So at this point, I would let you have the show and begin with your presentation. Can't wait to see all of the amazing things you have planned for us.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Right. Let me share my screen. Let's just share my screen and we will start the slide deck. Okay, so we will start with a very kind of quick slide deck talking about why accessibility actually matters and why it's important, the types of accessibility, and then we have a very exciting demo where I will actually show you how to build additional features in your application that will make it a lot more accessible. So I've talked about me. I'm not going to kind of cover that slide again. Like I said, I work for a company called Computer Center in the UK. And here's a few facts about me. That QR code is the QR code for all my social media. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, subscribe to my blog, or check my GitHub repo, you certainly can. So let's talk about some of the kind of mind-blowing stats, because one thing that I tend to hear quite a lot is that accessibility isn't common. It's not very popular. We don't need to build an application that's accessible because it only affects 10 users in my 5 million people organization. So the first kind of mind-blowing fact is that actually accessibility affects around 15% of the population. That's around 1 billion people that are affected permanently by some sort of disability. Now, in the UK, where I am based, that number goes to 20%. So that's 1 person in 5 people that will have an accessibility, permanent disability that will require some accessibility features. Now, this figure doesn't actually include a lot of other countries that don't report on this. So this figure could be much higher than it actually is. And the recently published report by WHO, the World Health Organization, shows that the disability rate has actually been increasingly growing over the last 20 years. Now, with that, 73% of those disabled users, so those users with accessibility needs, have actually reported an issue with their website or with an application they have used before. Now, that means that around 73 people in 100 people will have had an issue with an application they've used. That's not a good number at all. That's a very disappointing number. Now, out of those 73 people, 71% will pretty much click away from your website as soon as they land on the application or on the website and isn't screen reader accessible, or you can't change the theme, or the text isn't readable. And even further so, they won't actually tell you about it. So they will log onto your website or land on your website or your application, have a look. If it isn't accessible, they will just close it off and navigate to the next application. And then the last one is that around 70% of websites that have been checked in a survey from 2020 were deemed to have major accessibility issues. Now, that, again, like I said before, that is an extremely disappointing number, because it means that 70% of websites on the web, approximately 70% of websites, are not usable by people with disabilities, with people with accessibility needs. So let's talk about types of accessibility. Now, within the accessibility kind of space, we have various types of accessibility. Now, the first thing that we need to do is kind of break it down in categories. So as you can see on here, we have 5 kind of main groups of accessibility needs. Now, the first one, as you can see, is what's called a cognitive accessibility needs, or cognitive impairment. Now, this group is very often overlooked, and this actually group is probably one of the largest groups in the world. What we mean by cognitive is someone that has a cognitive impairment, so something like a learning disability that they were born with, let's say dyslexia. That could be someone that suffers with that's neurodivergent, so someone that suffers with that, as an example. That could be someone that suffers from migraines and is struggling to think throughout the day. That is a cognitive impairment. Then we have visual. Visual, as the title says, that's someone that's struggling with their sight, with their eyesight, whether that's someone partially sighted or someone with let's say with someone that's blind, or someone that needs to wear glasses. That is a visual impairment, but actually there's a lot more things that we will add to that in a second. Auditory, that's when someone is struggling with hearing. So whether they are wearing a hearing aid or they are completely deaf, that's one of those, or if they're in a loud environment and they can't hear what's being said to them. Motor is related to your movement. So that's someone that could be wheelchair bound, someone that doesn't have a limb, as an example, someone that's broken a limb, as an example, and is struggling to walk. And then speech, that's when someone is struggling to speak. So they have a speech impairment, as an example, whether that's following a stroke, as an example, or someone that's completely mute and cannot actually talk. Now, following that, we actually split each one of these groups into subgroups. So we will split that into subgroups based on the kind of length of that disability. Now, what I mean by that is that we actually have what's called a permanent disability, a temporary disability, and a situational disability. So for the permanent, these are the ones that we normally think of when we think of disabilities. That could be, like I said, someone in a wheelchair. That could be someone that's blind, someone that's deaf, someone that can't talk, someone that has a learning disability. These are things that are in 95% cases, although medicine is going very kind of far. These are uncurable diseases, apologies. These are uncurable disabilities that those people will have to live with for the rest of their lives. Then we have what's called temporary. Now, temporary is when you have an accident, as an example, and you break your leg, you sprain an arm, you get an eye infection and you can't see, you like I said, you break an arm and you can't ride, you can't work, and all of that. That is a temporary accessibility need. That could be, like I said before, a migraine. If you get a migraine, you are going to really struggle to think, and that is also a temporary accessibility need. And then we have what's called situational. Now, situational happens to around 95% of all of us. And a situational accessibility needs could be something like walking out of the house after working all day and the weather being really sunny and you're struggling to see what's outside and you're having to wear sunglasses. Or that could be, let's say, watching something on Netflix and having to turn captions on. I do this all the time. I'm not a native English speaker. I wasn't born in England. And I still sometimes struggle with accents and I'm having to turn on the captions. And I think pretty much a lot of people do. You can now also turn on captions in Teams. And it's a fantastic way to follow the meeting if you're struggling to understand what's being said. A situational need could be something like carrying your shopping bag from a supermarket and your phone ringing, and then you're not able to ring to answer the phone. You are trying to kind of maneuver and then you lose all of the shopping bags. That's also a situational accessibility need. So now we've talked about that, let's actually dive into the demo and show you how easily it can make applications a lot more accessible. So I will quickly navigate to my application. Now, for today's demo, I have an application called Apartment Manager. This is an application that I demoed at the Scottish Summit a couple of weeks ago. And the kind of use case for this application is very simple. If I just quickly close that off. The use case for the application is very simple. I have recently moved houses and I really I have a terrible kind of goldfish memory. So I needed something that would easily allow me to check the measurements of my room when I go furniture shopping, because like I said, I have a terrible goldfish memory. And most of the time when you go to IKEA or any other furniture shop, really, you get asked for measurements of your room or your layout of your room. Like I said, I can't ever remember, and then you end up buying the wrong furniture. So this application quickly allows me to check what furniture I have bought already. As you can see, I can see that I've bought all of this furniture. I can see the progress of the kind of furnishing of my room. If I've purchased something new, I can tick that and that will automatically load it up on the screen. Now, if I just quickly navigate back to menu on there. If I'm not sure where the room is or I want to see the whole kind of layout of the house, I can also toggle that to the map view. And as you can see, we can actually see all of the rooms directly on the floor plan here. So if I navigate to the profile settings, this is where all the magic is happening. So this profile settings page allows me to do things like choose a language. It allows me to choose a theme. So if I'm colorblind, as an example, I am able to quickly toggle to a theme that I find a lot more comfortable. Now, I don't know about you, Jaflet, but what I tend to do is the moment I download an application, whether that's Teams, Visual Studio Code, even on my mobile phone, I tend to switch everything to dark mode. I do find that light mode is very heavy on your eyes and it's just not very comfortable. What do you think, Jaflet?
Yeah, happens a lot with me too. Majority of my screens are usually in dark mode.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jaflet. The next thing that it allows you to do is actually launch a screen reader by default. So if you have a user that you know is using a screen reader, or you want to build a screen reader in here, we can automatically launch that from here as well. And I will actually show you how to build a screen reader into your application too. And then we can change the font size from default to larger. So if I was to just quickly demo what we can do on here, if I was to just, let's say, we'll swap that to German. if I just click save, what you will see is that the application is now translated to German. So you can see that everything in here is German. Now, if I was to change that to, let's say, Polish as an example, which is where I'm from, what you will see in a moment is that all of the application is translated to Polish. Now, the beauty of what I'm doing here is that I'm not even using a premium connector, and I'll show you actually how to build that slightly later on in the session. Then for the default, for the themes, I'll just quickly swap that to English just to make it understandable for everyone. For the theme itself, we can choose, let's say, dark theme. And if I click save, as you can see, that will swap it over to dark theme. If I want that to be monochrome as an example, and I click save, as you can see, that will now be in monochrome, so we don't really have any kind of color contrast in there apart from the photos that we store in the application. If I just swap that back to default and we'll click on save, then screen reader, I will not turn it on in here. I will just quickly navigate back to one of our pages. Now, to the top of my screen, hopefully you will be able to see that in a second. You can see that I have a button on here. Now, what this allows me to do is it allows me to launch a screen reader that I have actually built into the application. Now, if I was to click on
This is the home screen. Please select one of the available rooms below to view the details. To the bottom of the screen, there is a navigation menu with 3 buttons, starting from the left: Home Screen, Plan Screen and My Profile Screen.
Okay, so this is a very kind of simple way to implement a text-to-speech feature into your application, again, without using any premium connectors. And then the last option we can do is change the font size. So by default, we will have what's called the default font size, and we can also make it larger. So if I was to click on save, and we'll give it a second, as you can see, that's now become larger. So what we will do is I will actually show you how to build all of that from scratch. I have plenty of stuff that I actually want to show you today. So the first thing that I have as a kind of pro tip and is the kind of suggestion to use the built-in Windows tool. So by default with Windows, you get the ability to use 2 kind of key accessibility features. One is the ability to actually change and apply a color filter. So what this allows you to do is actually allows you to check what your colorblind person would be able to see if they were to use the application. I'll actually show you that in a second. And then the Windows Narrator allows you to launch a screen reader / immersive reader of what you have on your screen. Again, this allows you to kind of see if your application is accessible. You can close your eyes and try and sense what the person that is using a screen reader would feel there is on the screen based on what the screen reader is telling us. So if I was to just quickly open the start bar and we'll type in filters, the first thing that, as you can see, we can choose is adjust color filters. Now, if I launch that, I'll just move that to the other screen. There we go. As you can see, we have a toggle here to turn on the color filters. Now, if I turn that to the right, what you will see is that by default, it has automatically applied a color filter, and that is the inverted color filter. Now, what you are looking for here is to make sure that the text on here and the contrast between the text and the background meets the WCAG criteria, at least AA. Now, if it does, perfect. If it doesn't, that means that the background and the foreground text doesn't have enough contrast between them, and it means that you'll need to make your text darker. Now, if you can't read what's on here because it's too pale or it's not very visible, 99% of the time, a person that actually has accessibility needs will not be able to read that at all. So you need to make sure that you have that color contrast. Now, from here, as you can see, if a person has a specific color blindness, so they have, let's say, red-green color blindness, I can turn that filter on. And as you can see, I can see if that text is visible. I would always suggest that you pop that into a WCAG contrast check as well, and make sure that the contrast between the two of them is correct. Now, if we toggle off the color filters now, the second feature that I want to show you, like I said, is the Windows Narrator. So if we just type in Narrator, as you can see, now I won't launch it just because when I launch it, it will automatically start reading the screen. But this application, like I said, allows you to read the screen. So it launches a bit of an immersive reader and a screen reader and allows you to read whatever browser you have, whatever application you have, and everything else you have on the screen. So if you're not sure if your application is going to be compatible with a screen reader, or if you've missed anything off, this is a perfect way to test it. Now, the second suggestion that I have is obviously building the dynamic themes. Now, to build a dynamic theme, we have a couple of things that we want to do. by default, we don't have the ability to change a theme dynamically of the application. We get the chance to choose a theme when we build an app, and that's it. We are kind of stuck with that. So the way we want to structure this is we want to not only be able to change the theme dynamically, but we want the end user to be able to choose a theme, save that theme, and the next time they open the application to launch that application in that theme that they chose as the kind of preferred theme. So the way we will do it is if I just start with the actual SharePoint list. Now, for the kind of today's purposes, I have used SharePoint list to store the record. The first thing that we need to do is we need to create some sort of record for that user or have some sort of table where we will store the user's preferences. Now, as you can see, I have a very simple structure on here. We have the email column, which is my primary title column in SharePoint, for anyone that's familiar with SharePoint. Then we have the theme. The theme, as you can see, I've chosen default. Then we have the font size, again, default. Then we have the screen reader that will decide if the screen reader will be triggered by default when we launch the app or not. And then we have the language. So now we have that data structure. We then need to start building out a theme. Now, to do that, we need to create a collection of themes in the application. The easiest way to do this is because we are going to apply the collection, the themes across the entire application, is to do it in the app on start property. Now, if I was to open that up, what you will see on here is that I have a collection here that's called call themes. And in this collection, I am collecting a number of colors. Now, hopefully this is readable for anyone that's not familiar with the structure. But as you can see, we have the name of our theme, which is default, and then we're declaring colors. Now, in my instance, I have quite a few colors. In your instance, you might have 3 or 2 only, and you might not necessarily need any more. So as you can see, we have the primary color, the secondary color, tertiary color, the text color, again, second text color. Then we have a primary hex value. This will be useful for SVG, which I'll show you in a second. Secondary hex and a tertiary hex, and also background color. Now, as I scroll down, as you can see, we have another theme. So we have the dark theme. The principle is exactly the same. So we still have an array of these properties. And then we have the third theme, which is the monochrome theme. So if I was to build another theme into the application, all I really have to do is just add another array. And if I was to just quickly show you how to do that, is if we just quickly copy that across. So we'll just quickly copy that. So we'll copy the array. There we go. And then we will pop that at the end here. Perfect. And then what we're going to do is I will just call this theme, let's say, reactor theme. Now for the reactor theme, we'll just give it some random values. Let's say 131, and then we'll say 1215. I'm not sure what color that's going to be, so hopefully that's going to be some kind of, oh, that's still a blue color. Okay, let's make that 11 as an example. That's a slightly darker blue. We'll go ahead with that. So that's all we have to do. Now, if I run the application on start, we should shortly have that theme load in there. And the last thing that we actually need to do is we need to load that theme into our collection, into our choice column of themes. So if I was to just go to my profile screen, there we go, and go to my theme in here, all I have to do is just add that array, that record into this array. So we will just call that reactor. Okay. Now, if I click play, hopefully the demo demons are away from this session. If I was to click on the drop down and choose reactor, hopefully this color should go a bit darker in blue. If I just click on save. Ta-da! Oh, I think, okay, I know what I've done. I've chosen the dark, I copied the dark theme background, which is why it's gone dark. But as you can see, the button on the bottom has actually gone darker. If I was to just update that reactor theme, if we just quickly go back, and then we'll go to our app on start, I have a feeling that the background that we chose for that one is a very dark background. Yes, it's a dark gray background. So if I was to just change that background to white, just to quickly show you, white, there we go. And then we'll close that off. White. Actually, we'll just choose 255, 255, 255, and then 1. If we were to just do that, and we are missing a curly bracket in there, I think I may have broken that. Curly bracket. Let me just quickly see what I have broken. Oh, there we go. That's why too many brackets in there. Now, if I was to just quickly run the app on start, what we will see in a second is obviously the other part of this application is because we copied the dark theme rather than default theme. This is going to be dark, but as you can see, that button is the dark blue button that we chose before. Now, again, obviously this is not the best kind of showcase. There we go. Now, in order to build that up, like I said, we will need to create some kind of user record. So because we're storing the preference record in a table, when we launch the application, we will have to have a variable with that record. So in order to do that, again, we will have to navigate to our app on Start. And then if we scroll to the bottom, what you will see on here is that we have a variable here. So we're using the set function to set up a variable. And what this is effectively doing is it's looking up to that table. If I already have a record of that user, so if there is a record that matches my email address, so the current logged in email address, I will bring that record up. Sorry, the other way around. If it's blank, so if there isn't a record that matches my email address, I will set the default value. So we'll have the theme default, the font default, screen reader as false, and then language as English. But if there is a record that matches my email address, we will just look up that record and set that to a variable. So in order to assign that variable to any color property, to any text property, all we have to do is just navigate to the control. So if I just navigate to our profile dynamic color themes, if we just go into here and we'll go to the color property of our text, there we go. The first thing that we need to do is we need to perform a lookup. So we are looking up to our collection of themes. And then what we are looking to achieve is we want to make sure that the column with the name of the theme matches the name of the theme in my variable. So the way we'll do it is we'll use the name column, which is where we are storing the name of the theme. And then we'll use var user preference record and then dot theme. And then all we now have to do is just choose the color that we want to bring up here. So if I was to choose, let's say, primary color, this should make the text blue. Ta-da! As you can see, if I was to choose, let's say, secondary color, I think that's slightly lighter blue. As you can see, that's slightly lighter there. That's as easy as it is to make your application. Now, if I was to change the themes now, so if I was to just go back to my profile screen and just quickly choose dark theme as an example. Actually, that's not a good one. Let's just use reactor theme as an example. If we just navigate back to that screen, what should happen is that color of the text should now be darker blue, like you can see the primary color there. If we just navigate there, as you can see, I don't think I chose that one. Oh, I chose the secondary color. That's why if I just change that to primary color, what you will see is that that will be the blue that we set before. And that's how easy it is. So now if I start building additional themes into the application, this will automatically change. I don't have to do any more. Now, the common kind of misconception is that if you want to make an application accessible, you have to have additional 5 months of effort into your software development or application development, that it's going to take plenty of time or too much time than the customer is willing to spend. When in reality, if you build your application accessible by design, so you consider the accessibility from the very start, you build what I've just showed you, so you build a theme out. When you go to the production and you decide that you need an additional theme, it will take you 1 minute to add an additional theme. Whereas if you make an application inaccessible, so you push the application to production without considering the people that will be relying on accessibility features, you are then going to have to do a lot of reverse engineering. And a lot of the time, you might have to actually rewrite the whole application, because if it isn't user-friendly, isn't accessible, chances are that trying to kind of move around a couple of controls is not quite going to work out for you. So the next thing that I want to show is how you can do the same with an icon. So if I was to just go to our icon, now in here we do exactly the same. So if I just go to lookup, and in here we are looking up to the collection of themes, and then the condition again is the name of the theme, var user preference record dot theme. And then we'll close it off. And all we're doing here again, we are bringing up the color. So I will choose the primary color. And as you can see, that's changed it. And then the last icon on here that we have is an actual SVG. So SVGs, I'm not going to go into too much detail on how SVGs are built. SVGs obviously are built in XML, so they're built using code. Now, in order to change the color of an SVG, we have to reference obviously a table in the application, which means that to reference something outside of the code, we have to perform a slight kind of manipulation of functions. So in order to reference anything outside of the code, what we have to do is we have to start with a double quote, and then with the, I think it's called the ampersand sign. I always forget what that's called. And then we just have to perform exactly the same lookup. So if we just do lookup, and then we'll go to call of themes, where the name of the theme matches var user preference record dot theme. And then we need to bring up the color. Now, because SVGs don't accept RGBA values, they accept either RGB values or hex values, and our collection of themes has RGBA values. I'm going to connect that to one of the hex values that I have in that same record. So we'll just choose primary hex. And then once we've referenced that, all we need to do is we need to close that reference. And as you can see, if I just quickly go into here, that is in here already. Now, the primary hex is slightly different because we didn't change the actual primary hex, which is why it's slightly different blue than the other one. Now, the next tip that I have is how to make your applications multilingual in seconds. When I say in seconds, I mean in under 1 minute. So there are two ways to make your application multilingual. The first way is to use the Microsoft Translator connector, and you can translate your application. Now, the problem that you might run into very quickly is that there is actually a limit on amount of characters that you can translate per day with your application. So when you first go into connect to the Microsoft Translator, if I just quickly navigate into here, and we'll create another Microsoft Translator connection. There we go. When we go into here, if I just quickly go to remove, and then we'll add that back in again. We'll go translator. Oops, sorry, let's just add that in. Translator. When you add that in, you're normally asked for an API key again, because I already have this environment. I'm not asked for the API key. Now, if you don't have an API key, like I said, you can click on OK, and that will connect to the Microsoft Translator connector, but you're bound by the 55,000 amount of characters that you want to translate. So if you want to increase that, you can actually use the Microsoft Translator resource in Azure. So you will need to create a resource in your Azure portal. If I was to just navigate into here, and what you will need to do is you will need to navigate to the translator, which this is working on top of Microsoft Azure Cognitive Services. And we will need to create a new resource. So if I just go to create, and in here, again, if you're familiar with Azure, you will be very familiar with this view. We will choose, let's say, normal resource group in here. And then we'll choose the region. I will just choose a very random region from here. The name, let's just say we'll call it Reactor 123. Again, for anyone watching this, please do not follow this naming convention. And then the pricing tier, that's where you will choose the pricing tier. So as you can see, the first one on the top is free, which means that you get up to 2 million characters for absolutely free. So if you want to use up to 2 million characters per month for free, you can do that. And then if you will be exceeding that amount, you will have to start paying. Now, this is perfect for small applications or small user bases. But if you have an application with 10,000 users, as an example, and they are all using Microsoft Translator, you are very quickly going to run out of your characters. So before I show you how to do it the free way with no premium connectors or no paying at all, I will quickly show you how to do that with that Microsoft Translator connector. So all we have to do in here is we just need to call the Microsoft Translator connector. And then we'll need to translate. Now, the first thing that we ask for is the query. So this is the text that we want to translate. Let's just say we will say hello world. And then we need to provide the language tag. So in here, we will pop the ENGB language tag. Oops, ENGB language tag. And in a second, as you can see, that will translate to English. If I wanted that to be, let's say, Africans as an example, we can just say AF and close that off. Looks like that's not accepted. Let's just make that, let's say, French. Okay. And in a second, that will translate it for us. Now, as you can see, because we are making an API call to the Microsoft Translator resource, there is a little bit of a lag, so you will have to wait a second or two for that to come up. Now, if you're building a small application, that's not too bad. But if you have an application that's connecting to a load of data sources, load of tables with plenty of formulas, your application will start slowing down as you're making those API calls for every single control. So there is a free way to do this, a free trick to do this, and I'll quickly show you how to do that. So the first thing that we'll do is, I'm not sure if you can actually see, but we have a drop down in here. Oh, it's because I'm using that other theme. I'll just quickly navigate to my profile screen. We'll change the theme to default so we can actually see the text that we have in here. Again, let me just quickly go into here. And then if I just navigate to multilingual, as you can see, we have a drop down in here where I'm able to choose languages. Now, the first thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to store the translated text somewhere. So in that instance, again, I'm going to use a SharePoint list, which is where I'm going to store all of the translated text. Now, if I was to just navigate into here, as you can see, we have 4 columns in this in this list. The first column is we can treat as a kind of primary column. So that's the original text that we're translating from. So because I am based in England, I am translating the text from English. If you're based somewhere else in the world, you will obviously use the another language. Then the second column is the language that we want to translate that to. So in our instance, we will choose a random language in a second. Then language tag is the language tag that we will use to translate to. And then the target language text is the actual translated text. So if I was to just quickly navigate to my application, if we just say, let's say, hello world. Now, as you can see, this is just plain text. So if I was to choose anything from the drop down here, nothing will happen because we haven't assigned anything. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to actually connect that text to that drop down. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to show you how to do that quickly. It works exactly the same as the columns and the dynamic themes work. So if I was to just do a lookup, and we will look up to our collection of languages. Now, with the languages, we want to compare the language column in our data source to the language selected in a dropdown. So in our case, that will be the language column. Language, and we're comparing it to the dropdown. So in our instance, I think I've called that dropdown languages. Then we'll do selected and then dot value, and then where the text that we want to translate from matches the original text. So in our instance, let's just go ahead with, let's just say we'll go for bathroom as an example. So if I just do where the title, so title, again, if you've worked with SharePoint, you know that that's the primary column. In my instance, I have renamed the title column to original text, where the title matches bathroom. Okay, and because we're performing a lookup, we now need to choose the value that we're bringing up. In our instance, that will be the target language that we're translating to. Now, as you can see, that's translated into Polish. I can confirm that this is in Polish. If I was to just drop down and go to German, that's also German translation as well. So what I'm actually going to show you how you can quickly do that yourself without having to pay for any connectors or creating a resource in Azure. So for the demo purposes today, I have created a very simple flow. Now, this flow is triggered manually, so I can create a language manually. Then in the get items function, so in the get items function, we want to get the items in a list, but because if I was to navigate here, what you will see is that if I was to just sort that from A to Z, you will see that we have a lot of repeating values already, because this is our original text that we're translating from. A lot of these values will be repeated. So what we want to avoid is translating the same text 20 times because we have 20 languages. What we will need to do is we'll need to perform what's called a no data query. So we'll need to filter through those results. And if I just open the advanced option in here, and all we're doing is we are filtering based on the language tag. So I just want to bring up the original values of the text and filter the list based on the English GB tag, which is my original tag. And then once I've done that, we need to put that through the translator. So because the get items will bring up a table of records, by default, it will apply to each loop, which is a default in Power Automate. And then what we are going to put in the apply to each loop is the outcome of the output of the get items action. The first thing that we need to do is translate the text. So as you can see, we're translating the text, and in our instance, we will choose, let's go ahead with Africans, and we will translate the text from the title column. Now, don't forget that the title column is our original text column, so this is what we're translating. And then once we've translated, we obviously need to save that record somewhere. So if I just go to create item, if we just quickly open that up, there we go. Now, as you can see, I am saving that to our languages list. We're translating the title from here will be the title from that original column will be in here because that's the original text. The language we're transferring to is the African language. Then we translate, this is the language tag for the African's language. And then the target language text is the output of the translation that we have in here. Now, if I was to just quickly, actually, I've just remembered, do I already have an African language in there? I don't think I did. No, I don't think I did. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly save that. We'll give it a second to save. I will run the flow. Now, what you'll see is that the flow will probably take about 20 seconds to run. And then there's only one more thing that we need to do in the application, and the translation will be ready. So we'll just give it a moment. Perfect. Now we are ready to test. If I just quickly click on test, go to manually, we'll trigger that off, and then we'll run the flow. Done. Okay, so what will start happening now, if I was to just navigate to my list, if I was to just quickly refresh that, what we will see is if I was to just sort that by A to Z, you will see that those translations in the African language are already coming up here. That's how quick it is. And actually, if I was to navigate back to my flow in a second, what we will probably see that in 2-3 seconds, this will be completed. That's as easy and as quick as it is. We'll just give it a few moments. Hopefully this will not go over 1 minute because that will break my promise of translating. Perfect, 28 seconds. So as you can see, that's now completed 28 seconds. And all we have to do now is if I was to just navigate into here, all I have to do is add another language into here. So we will add Afrikaans in here. As you can see, let me just quickly make sure that it's definitely spelled with double A. Definitely spelled with double A. And all we have to do in here now, if I was to just quickly refresh my application, because we've obviously saved some new records. If I was to choose Afrikaans, now it's the real life test. If I was to choose Afrikaans, that should hopefully translate to Afrikaans. Is that correct? Hopefully it is for anyone that knows African language. If I was to just, I can see Jaflet is nodding his head. Is that correct, Jaflet?
Well, I'm not good with Africans, so I have no idea.
Okay, we will trust the Microsoft Translate on this occasion. But chances are, if I was to just quickly go to A to Z in here, if we just go to bathroom and we'll go to Afrikaans, yes, as you can see, bathroom is badkamer in Afrikaans, and that's as easy as it is. Now, if I was to just go to my profile screen now, and if I was to just add that language into here again. It looks like I already have it. What will now happen is if I change that to Afrikaans and I click on save, the whole application will be translated to Afrikaans. I didn't have to do anything extra. That's as easy as it is. And you can see that you can actually do that in 1 to 1 minute. So hopefully I didn't break the promise. Okay, so I will just quickly go back to my screen again. I will take that back to English again. We will save that and we will navigate to the next option. Now, the next thing that we have on here is text-to-speech, dynamic text size. So text size works very similarly to a collection of themes or multilingual applications. But in our instance, we can do it even simpler. So because we only have 2 values, we either have default text or we have larger text, we can just use a variable. Now, the way we'll do it is if the variable is equal to large, we want the text to be of certain size. Anything else, so the default, it will be a different size. So if I was to just quickly go into here, all we have to do is we just have to do an if statement. Oops, sorry, not the right property. Let me just quickly navigate to the size property. There we go, font size property. And then all we're doing here is if var user preference record, so this is our original record, if that's equal, let me just go to font size. Oops, font size. If that's equal to default, I want the default text to be 20. Otherwise, I want it to be, let's say, 60. And that's as easy as it is. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to go back to my profile screen and I will just change that to larger. We'll click on save. And then we'll go to our text size. I'm just going to pop those on. As you can see, that changed the size because the value of the variable now is, if we just go in here, you can see that the font size that I've selected is now larger. If I was to just go back again, if we just change that to default, if we just quickly, default, save that to default. If I just navigate back there, how to text size, as you can see, that's now smaller. Okay, text-to-speech. Now, text-to-speech is very easily built as well with the Microsoft Translator connector. So if I was to just quickly go into our audio control, all we have to do in here, if I just quickly take that out, all we have to do in here is use the Microsoft Translator again. And then in the brackets, the first thing that we asked for, so similarly to our translator, to our translating action, we need to provide some kind of query. So what we want to be read out to the user. So in our instance, we will just say, hello, Jaflet. Okay. And then we need to choose the accents that we want to use we want the text-to-speech to use. So in our instance, we will just use the English accent. And, sorry, there we go, English accent. There we go. Now we'll give it 1 second because obviously it's making an API call. If I just make that slightly bigger. And then if I play that, hopefully you'll be able to hear that.
Hello, Jaflet.
Perfect. And that's as easy as it is. So if you wanted to start reading out some of the controls on your screen, what we can say is we can just say we want to read that as well. So I can see that that's called label 3_35. Again, very bad naming convention. What we can say is we can say that we want to say hello, Jaflet, and then we want to read the text in here. Now, again, we'll give it a couple of seconds. There we go. If I play that, hopefully that should read, say, hello, Jaflet, and then read what we have on that label.
Hello Jaflet. Use Windows built-in assistive features to test your app.
Okay, and that's as easy as it is. Again, because we're using the translator resource that's based on Azure Cognitive Services, if you are going to use that for a larger user base, I would always strongly suggest that you purchase that additional capacity in the Microsoft resource, just to make sure that you are not bound by the character limit, like I said before. Now, the next thing that we have on here is just a couple of tips that I have that I wanted to share with you. So the first one is around buttons. Now, one thing that I see very often is where people actually skip the tooltip. Now, the tooltip to us might mean nothing, absolutely nothing, but some people actually rely on a tooltip. Now, what I mean by that is if you hover over a button, and that button is just, let's say, an icon with no text, when I hover over that, I want to make sure that I understand what that button is going to do. Now, if you're anything like me, I like to just press every single button I can, and oftentimes I will just break something. So if I was to just quickly show you what I mean, if I was to just hover over that button, as you can see, there's nothing coming up. Now, if I hover over this button, I now have a tooltip there to say, click here to save. To us, if you don't have accessibility needs, as an example, that might seem very trivial. But to someone that's relying on that, or someone that has, I don't know, problems with recognizing icons, as an example, this is the key feature. Someone that's using a screen reader, as an example, this will allow that screen reader to read the tooltip as well. Now, another thing as well that Microsoft have recently added to buttons that are located in the Teams Studio for Power Apps is the ability to hide buttons from assistive technologies. So again, if you're anything like me, I'm very UX and UI obsessed. Sometimes I'll use a button to decorate my application. For whatever reason, I will use it in disabled mode. If you set the hide from assistive technologies to false, if I was just quickly go in here and we'll go into one of these buttons. If you set that to false, that means that the button will not be read out by the screen reader. Now, you obviously, if it's only used for decoration, you don't want it to be read out by the screen reader. Okay, tip number 2, use icons. I can't recommend it enough for people that have dyslexia or cognitive or even reading problems, or people that are constantly busy and you know they don't want to read a lot. Using icons in your application allows your user to associate a specific action with that button. So if we look at, let's say, Bootstrap framework, the way it works normally is you have, let's say, a text input or a date picker, and next to the date picker, you'll have a date, like a calendar icon, as an example. And that's a very easy way to enhance user experience. Now, in my case here, I'm using SVGs. So if I was to just quickly toggle that to the right, as you can see, if I'm changing the values, now the way I'm doing it is exactly the same way I showed you before. So we are assigning the values of this into our SVG. And as you can see, that will change the color dynamically. Tip number 3, naming conventions. So the kind of key thing that you want to worry about, I wouldn't necessarily worry about labels or galleries. The key things that you want to pay attention to is your buttons and your screens. So with buttons, you always want to make sure you have a tooltip and that you have some text on the button. And if you don't want it to be read out by the screen reader, obviously you want to hide that. The second thing is screens, screen naming conventions. Now, I have seen this a lot of times, and actually when I was starting with Power Apps, that's how I used to name my screen. So I would name my screen, let's say, SCRN Home, or Screen Home, or SCR Home. Now, if you call your screen that, because Power Apps are effectively a web application, when your user is using a screen reader, that's exactly how the screen reader will read that screen out to the person. Now, if I was to just quickly show you what I mean, we're going to do a Microsoft text-to-speech again. So if we just quickly do Microsoft Translator text-to-speech, and in here we'll just do SCRN home. Actually, we'll do home as well, like that underscore. That's what I normally see, and we'll use the English accent. We'll give it a second to make the API call. And then if I was to click on play,
SCRN_home.
and this is exactly how that screen is going to be read out to a person. Now, if you're using a screen reader and or if you're not using a screen reader and you want to kind of imagine what that is like, close your eyes and listen to that again. If I heard that, I would think that my screen reader actually broke.
SCRN_home.
I wouldn't understand what the screen reader is telling me to do. So if you name your screen home and then follow that with the screen as an example, as you can see on here, that will allow the user and the screen reader to read out exactly what the name of that screen is. Now, tip number 4, dialog boxes. Dialog boxes are effectively pop-up windows. If I just quickly zoom that out slightly, there we go. Pop-up windows. So I have used a lot of pop-up windows. Again, we do that a lot with, let's say, update context to say something has been successfully submitted, as you can see. So an entry has been submitted. Now, this is not too bad as long as you don't have any kind of actionable buttons on there, because if you have an actionable button on a pop-up window, the screen reader will not pick it up. Now, the way kind of screen reader works with dialog boxes is because we have a screen behind and we are overlaying the dialog box over that screen. So we are normally adding like a dark rectangle over the whole screen, and then we are popping that pop-up window on there. The way the screen reader will work is when the user opens the screen, it will read everything on the screen. When they click the button, you'll have the pop-up window, but the pop-up window will not actually be recognized by the screen reader. It will just ignore it. So in order for the person to know that there is a pop-up window, they will have to run the screen reader again against that screen. And at the very end of that, the screen reader will pick up your pop-up window. Tip number 5, use tab index in containers. Now, tab index is very important for people that use tab on their keyboard to kind of navigate through the application, navigate through a form. Now, tab index is effectively the way that we'll navigate around control. So let's say for our text input control, in England, the kind of standard way is from left to right, top to bottom. In some countries, it's the other way around. So it's from right to left, top to bottom, or left to, top to bottom, left to right. It depends on where you're based. So what you want to make sure is that when you click tab, as an example, that it navigates in the right way. Now, a lot of controls allow you to change the tab index. So you want to make sure that you have captured that correctly in the right order. If you don't want to capture that, or you don't want to use the tab index for, let's say, I don't know, a label control or whatever that may be, you can select the tab index value and set that to be -1, and that will automatically be omitted. Now, what I mean by that is if I was to just quickly, because I have the tab index assigned to here already, if I was to just quickly move that over here, what you will see happen now is that by default, this will automatically pick up that we're going here, here, and then we're going there. Now, if you want to change the layout of the tab index and the kind of structure of how that works, you can actually place your text inputs in a container. So if I was to just quickly, I've lost my mouse, there we go. If I was to just quickly go into here, you will see that I have a container 1 and container 2. And the way this is going to work, it's going to go from top to bottom, left to right. And if I was to just quickly show you, if we just go into here, 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 here. So you can see that I've swapped the kind of way that this is doing it. And then the last kind of tip that I have, if we just quickly go into here, is never disable focus border thickness. Now, I know to some people that might be a bit of an annoying feature where you, let's say, use your tab and then it will have like the kind of rectangle around it. I know it's some people think it doesn't look great. For people that use tab to navigate through the application, this indicates where they are on the application, so please do not remove that. Now, the good news is that Microsoft, actually with the Teams Studio for Power Apps, they have completely disabled the ability to take out the focus border thing, so you can't actually remove that. Now, before I hand over to you, Jaflet, that's the end of the kind of demo. Before I hand over to you, I do have one more video that I quickly want to kind of share with you as well. This is a video that one of my peers on LinkedIn shared recently, and it's a video that really resonated a lot. Now, this video is of a lady that suffers with macular degeneration, which means that her eyesight decreases with time and it will lead to blindness. So I'm just going to quickly play that video and then I'll hand over to Jaflet.
Keep them closed. Now, open them. Happy birthday, Mum.
Thanks. Get back here. Oh, look at you.
Stop it, Mum. Okay, bye.
Solid, liquid and gas. Write that down.
Let's go.
Thanks, Mom. Check this one out. Do you need help, Mom?
No, it's fine.
Come on, let me help you.
Seriously. Ow! It's gonna be okay.
It's fine. Hold it. There you go, Mum. Thank you.
Now, that was a real life example of a person that was healthy for 40 years of her life and suffered from macular degeneration. Right. Thank you so much for listening. I'll hand over to you, Jaflet.
Thank you so much, Christine. And thanks for ending your session with that touching video. I would definitely, want to make my applications accessible the next time we get to build the solutions. And thank you very much for sharing all of these tips. So while you were sharing those tips, I was able to capture 5 of them. And I'm sure all of those who joined this call were able to capture some too. I'll just go over them again. Use less buttons, use more icons. Your naming conventions should go correct-ish, should have tooltips and a brief description. You should make use of tab index and containers correctly and never disable focus border thickness. Thanks for sharing these tips. I hope I got them correctly.
Yeah, thank you so much for capturing them. That's awesome.
Great. And I'm sure at this point, everybody who has joined this call would definitely want to think about how to make their applications, their solutions accessible next time. There are 2 links that will be pasted in the chat, and I'll talk a little bit about both links. So if you love to learn about how to make your solutions more accessible and reach out to these large number of people who need these solutions to be accessible, please be sure to go over to the Microsoft Learn module that has been shared, the first link. And then if you're a student and would love to build solutions that are accessible, especially solutions surrounding Microsoft Power Platform, be sure to use the second link, which will take you to the Student Hub, a place where you have lots of resources free for students to learn about Microsoft technologies. I love the fact that Microsoft is really key about empowering every person, including those who have one disability or another, to be able to utilize their solutions at all times. And thanks for having people like you, Christian, having sessions like this to educate us about accessibility. If you have any questions at any point in time, please be sure to reach out to Christian on LinkedIn. I'm sure she's going to share her link. You could just search for her there, or she would paste her link and it will be displayed. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us. There is also the 30 Days of Learning program running for students all over the world. So if you're a student in a university from any country and you love to learn about Microsoft technologies and how you can build solutions that would empower the lives of others, be sure to be part of the 30 Days of Learning program. Also be sharing the link to that session with you all. Again, it's my pleasure to be on this session with you, Christian. Thanks everybody for joining. To have a great day ahead.
Thank you so much, Jaflet. It's been fun. Thank you so much for having me and have a fantastic day.
Bye, everyone.